And that address is bob at intforecaster.com. That's B-O-B at INTFORECASTER.com, or you can call toll free 800-375-4188. That's 800-375-4188.
All right, fine. Ray, did you have anything else you wanted to say before we let you go?
This is a comment. I think where they eliminate books, they also eliminate people eventually.
Ray is simply saying that he thinks that they are going to close down a lot of the newspapers, and so you're not going to have newspaper print. Everything will be up on the Internet.
Everything.
Books will be on the Internet. I said they've written material. Magazines will be on the Internet. And then they can delete what they want to. And as it was in George Orwell's 1984, if you can't find these thoughts, these ideas, they just didn't exist. And we've seen this really so many things. Most people have never heard of Operation Keelhaul, or after the end of the Second World War, the United States and Great Britain and the Western European allies sent 6 million Russians back to Russia to be killed, and most of them were executed. 2/3 of them were executed very shortly after they arrived. How could you conceal something like that from the American people? Why, we have freedom of the press. And if you have freedom of the press, you have the freedom to suppress whatever you want. I mean, literally thousands of the Nazi war criminals were brought both to the United States, and probably between 10 and 60,000 actually sent to South America so they could live out their days comfortably and continue many of their horrendous experiments both here and in South America in something called Operation Paperclip and the rat line. Not a word of that in the controlled media. I mean, certainly instance after instance of satanic rituals and demonstrations against them covered in a book we have called Satanic Crimes. Over in Europe, of course, these things are well known, not ever mentioned here. The existence of the Bilderberger Organization has meetings regularly throughout the world. You never hear about this meeting of the elite. Why? Because they control the media here in the United States, and they've concealed their existence. So they've already been doing this for some time, Ray. Yeah. I just think it's just going to get a lot worse.
Yeah. Well, that's about all I...
all right, God bless you. Good to hear from you. Thank you very much. Bob, what do you think of what Ray was saying?
Oh, I think he's correct. The public is learning, though. I get letters every day. I got one today from a serviceman who wanted to subscribe. He's on his way to Afghanistan. And I sent him a note, said, terrific, just make sure you reprint it and give it to everybody who's interested. And it'll be interesting to see what happens, because they'll probably try to stop him, if not stop him from giving the forecaster out or sending it to other people's computers, you know.
Well, I think it's so vitally important that people understand that all these wars are phony wars. Like Vietnam was a phony war. We never tried to win the war. We were actually subsidizing the Russians, who were subsidizing the North Koreans, North Vietnamese, who were subsidizing the Viet Cong, that were killing our boys. The same thing in Afghanistan. We send money to Pakistan. They give it to the intelligence. The intelligence funds the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. So we're funding the people who are killing our boys in Afghanistan today. When are the American people going to wake up and realize that we are not trying to catch Osama bin Laden? We let him escape when it was at Tora Bora back there in December of 2001. We never tried to get him. We have an article out of the Washington Times. Anybody would like to see it? High government officials said, we're not trying to get Osama bin Laden. Our policy is not Osama bin Laden first. Our policy is Osama bin Laden last. If we captured or killed Osama bin Laden, how would we justify this war? How would we justify this war? And you'll find that in my writings, but we have the article. We'd be glad to send you a copy. Understand and weep for all those boys who've died for nothing. Well, let's telephone number again, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. Bob, what are the big issues now? Certainly this past week by the Chinese premier had, sent a message to Barack Obama saying he was very concerned about the stability of the American dollar, especially since the Chinese have so much money invested here. And then, of course, we got the word that Mr. Geithner is going to go ahead and simply create another $1.5 trillion for the TALF program. I love these acronyms: TALF, TARP, FASB. All of these have meanings. Certainly the CDOs and the AIG and the SIVs, and all of these are just start to confuse people. You can't quite get your arms around what they're talking about as they use the acronyms. But certainly, I think there are a lot of people, certainly not only in this country but throughout the world, who are worried about the stability of our currency. And if you destroy the stability of your currency, you really destroy the nation, don't you?
You sure do. And in this case, it's not only going to be the United States, it's going to be every currency that's going to be devalued, and I think they'll do it simultaneously. And they will default at the same time, and everybody will live unhappily ever after and broke. And they just don't want a gold-backed currency no matter what it is. And I think they're going to pay dearly for it because there's too many people know what they're doing today. This is not the 1960s when you and I started off with this idea. This is today, and the communications are spectacular. And as long as they're open to us, these people are not going to get away with this.
Well, I think it's really very interesting. There's a fellow named Ben Stile who works as a special fellow there at the Council on Foreign Relations. Apparently he's on loan from the Royal Institute of International Affairs, which is the European or the English counterpart of the Council on Foreign Relations. But Ben Stile keeps writing articles, and of course we are a correspondent for with the CFR. We get all their material, and they reproduce his articles that say the importance of coming up with a new currency that is gold-backed. Now, why would the CFR be pushing something like that? Do you think that's what they have in their mind down the line? Of course, after they've destroyed the value of all the currencies and impoverished the people throughout the world?
They could. The question is, where's the gold and who's going to hold it? And do we really want a world currency which denies everybody their sovereignty? And, what I'm getting in mail from all over the world is that we don't want that. And if our country tries to do that, we're going to overthrow the government.
Well, certainly I don't think the people...
are coming from everywhere.
Well, I don't think the people want it, but do you think that they really care? The elite really don't care what the common people want. I mean, the elite have their plan, and they're planning on issuing the currency. Beg pardon?
How are they going to put it in place?
Well, I haven't the slightest idea. I think that's what they plan. I think it's a terrible idea. But they say, look, you're going to have a gold-backed currency. It will be privately issued, not issued by government, because you can't trust government. But, of course, you can trust us because we're the elite, and we know what's best for you. We're concerned about you common people. So we're going to restore the stability of currencies with a privately issued gold-backed currency, and they've actually come out and recommended or suggested that. So I think that's what down the line, after they've managed to destroy everything and suddenly inflate destroy the value of our currency as they have in Zimbabwe, and the government that we put in place and we've kept, certainly the dictator, the ruthless communist dictator, Mugabe, in power in Zimbabwe. Why, I think that this may be what they intend to do here. Only time is going to tell. Anyway, of course, our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. And let's go to Vince, who's calling us. Where are you from, Vince?
I'm from Oneonta.
Okay, fine. What state is that in?
That is in New York.
All right, fine. Go right ahead.
I listen to the news a lot, and you hear about these people, like Obama giving $1 trillion to this guy, $1 trillion to that guy, China giving us X number of billions of dollars, we're giving Israel X number of billions of dollars. How does this money get transferred from one place to the other?
Bob, how's the money?
Bank wires.
It seems like it's monopoly money. I mean, what happened? I mean, what exactly would happen if we didn't pay back, or somebody else didn't pay back the money that we loaned, or that was loaned to us, or we loaned them? What would be the consequences?
Well, first of all, Vince, we're not lending money to Israel. Most of us, we're giving the money to Israel. We're giving the money to Egypt. We're giving the money to countries throughout the world. We're going to give almost $1 billion
that's even worse.
Beg pardon?
That's even worse.
I know it's worse, but that's what we're doing. We have to borrow money every single day, probably in the neighborhood of about $3 billion. Every day we have to borrow from foreign countries to maintain, our balance of payments, because basically we have to pay our bills, so we have to borrow the money. And then we're giving money away. That doesn't really sound very logical, does it? I mean, if you were head over heels in debt, would you really want to be giving money away?